Shalom, family. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Well, we're going to talk about these emails for Donald Trump. Now, I was going to do it in a premiere, but I changed my mind because there were quite a few things missing from that video that this will definitely fill in. So, anyway, one thing about Donald Trump, he posts out on Truth Social every day. That's why a lot of things that he posts actually makes the news. Well, since these Epstein emails have come out, y'all, he has gone silent. Not one post in the last 24 hours. And for Donald Trump, that's almost unheard of. But these emails, you can tell, is a big concern for him. And as I had stated to y'all before, these emails came out at a time when he had fell out with Jeffrey Epstein. So Jeffrey Epstein was not feeling Donald Trump when you hear a lot of these emails. It's like Donald Trump and Elon falling out. They're the best of friends and best of buddies, always around each other. And then, boom, they fall out. Well, it seemed like that was how things went with Jeffrey Epstein. They were the best of friends for years, and then, boom, they fell out. So it was a total of 20,000 emails that got leaked. That's a lot of darn emails, but that's how many got leaked. And Donald Trump is all over these emails. And I think this is just the beginning. There's going to be a lot more coming, y'all. A lot more. And that's what Donald Trump is concerned about. But I want to see how long he's going to stay silent, or if he's going to try to make up some garbage to put out there like he always does. But yeah, this is going to be quite a scandal. So, like I said, y'all, don't be surprised if there's another shutdown in January, just so Donald Trump can silence all of this stuff that's coming out about Epstein. 20,000 emails. Yes, 20,000. Mhm. All right, y'all, let me go ahead and share my screen so we can get started. It's this one. Yep. All right, y'all, give me a one if you can see my screen. Okay. Thank you.
So I went through all 20,000 of the emails that the Democrats on the House Oversight Committee got from Jeffrey Epstein's estate. Obviously, people have paid a lot of attention to the emails that were released yesterday morning, where Jeffrey Epstein emails Ghislaine Maxwell back in 2011, referring to Donald Trump as the dog that isn't barking, and refers to Donald Trump having apparent knowledge about victims who it's alleged that Trump spent time with over at Jeffrey Epstein's house, according to these emails. But there's a lot more emails that are far more damaging. We see emails where it appears that Jeffrey Epstein is consulting with the Russian government like a week before the Helsinki summit back during Donald Trump's first term. He mentions consulting with Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, to provide information about Donald Trump, it seems, at least in these emails, to the Russians. You have Epstein referencing what appears to be a lot of dirt about Donald Trump's finances, about mortgages, about Donald Trump screwing people over. You have Epstein in these messages saying Donald Trump's the most disgusting human being he's ever seen, and there's not a any ounce of goodness in Donald Trump's entire body. And he says Trump is even grosser in person than how he appears. Let me just go through these emails with you. I want to do this in a methodical way because I went through all 20,000 of these, and I want to highlight for you the key emails. I've broken them down here. Let's just go through this together right now. So there's this email right here. Jeffrey Epstein in 2015, he emails someone named Landon Thomas Jr., and he says, have them ask my houseman about Donald almost walking through the door, leaving his nose print on the glass as young women were swimming in the pool, and he was so focused he walked straight into the door. You know, that's Donald Trump, Epstein, young women. Let's keep reading some of these emails. Jeffrey Epstein says in emails that he had been advising the Russian government on how to deal with Donald Trump, one of several cases in which he wielded his connections to try to influence the course of foreign affairs. So here's the email right here where you have Epstein emailing the former prime minister of Norway. Okay, it's a big deal. He's emailing Thorbjørn Jagland, former prime minister of Norway, so like not just like a random person. And Epstein goes, I think you might suggest to Putin that Lavrov can get insight on talking to me. Vitaly Churkin used to, but he died. Other words, he's...
Is this another indication, fellas? They got to release everything that they have. Otherwise, this drip, drip, drip will just be going. Bill O'Reilly, what is your take on the significance?
So on St. Patrick's Day of this year, I was in the Oval Office with President Trump, and he asked me, what about the Epstein files? Should they be released? And I said, Mr. President, if there is verification of facts in the Epstein case from the attorney generals, Barr and Garland, what we see today is a bunch of innuendo. It's hearsay. There isn't any direct backup for any allegation, because there aren't any allegations other than Trump may have been in a house where there are some girls. Okay, so you have the lady in question, and I feel very bad for Miss Giuffre's family. He committed suicide. What a horrible thing. The whole thing is just awful. And that's right on Epstein. You have her saying under oath, Trump didn't do anything, and you have Maxwell. But here's the most important person you have, not under oath. Dershowitz. Dershowitz was Epstein's lawyer, and lawyer-client confidentiality ends with death. Dershowitz went on television today, said, I have all of the Epstein stuff, and there isn't anything. And I asked Epstein directly, while I was representing him, whether Donald Trump was involved in any kind of untoward activity. And Epstein said no. So now you have the three principal players in this case, all saying the same thing. Yet the press is so irresponsible, so corrupt, so hateful, they will not even mention that. It's death by innuendo. That is what they're aiming for.
Bill said and just articulated is incredibly important. It is death by innuendo, according to the evidence that has already been put out there and what Bill articulated in terms of what Alan Dershowitz had to say, what Ms. Maxwell has had to say. Even Epstein, in the emails where he said the dog that's barked is Trump, he's talking about, he's indicating that he would talk. Well, why would Trump talk if he's the one that's being, why would he talk if he's the one that's being implicated? If anything, he would talk. Epstein came across as being fearful that Trump might talk about him, not about Trump. And so all of those things make sense. Here's the only thing that I would add to Bill in terms of this death by innuendo. Yeah, that's from the politicians. That's from them wanting to open the Epstein files. Got it. But there's an abundance of people out there, particularly those associated with the MAGA movement, that want it released as well. And they're not politicians. They're American citizens who have been very emphatic and adamant in their support of Trump, by and large, from a policy perspective, from his politics. But when it comes to this issue, they're not bending on that. Why? Because they're saying even if it's not him, it's power brokers that exist inside and outside our government that he's familiar with, and they don't want those folks protected. So to sit up here and act as if it's just a political thing and politicians that want to kill him by innuendo and stuff like that, that's not to say you're wrong, Bill, because it's certainly they don't mind slicing and dicing Donald Trump up any chance they get. Fair enough. But that doesn't have anything to do with the average American citizen out there that wants to find out about those individuals.
One of the Jeffrey Epstein emails backs up Jill Harth's story from 1993 when she filed a lawsuit against Donald Trump claiming that he essayed her. In 1993, the lawsuit states, the defendant Trump also accosted Lauren Petrella, an invited guest of American Dream Festival, by sneaking uninvited into Ms. Petrella's room at Mar-a-Lago in pre-dawn hours for the purpose of taking advantage of a, quote, sleeping beauty. A startled Ms. Petrella awoke and inquired of the defendant why he was in her bed. A leering, groping Trump replied, you said you don't sleep with men on the first date. Now it's the second date, and here I am. Now in this email from Jeffrey Epstein in 2015, former New York Times reporter Thomas Landon says, everyone is coming to me thinking I have juicy info on you and Trump because of this. And then the quote of terrific guy, knew him for 15 years. Jeffrey responds with, would you like photos of Donald and girls in bikinis in my kitchen? Yes. Hawaiian Tropic girl, Lauren Petrella.
It's not just these 3 emails from Jeffrey Epstein that mention President Donald Trump. There is actually a ton of emails that mention Donald Trump, and I read them this morning. Now, you probably already know that the House Democrats on the Oversight Committee released these 3 specific emails from the convicted sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein that all mentioned the president this morning. But what you may not know is the full House Oversight Committee, including Republicans, released 20,000 additional documents from the Epstein estate this morning, too. And I just went through hundreds of those documents, and they all, in some way or another, mention Trump. Some talk about Trump before he was president, but most of these emails from Jeffrey Epstein were dated 2017, 2018, during Trump's first term, and discussed Trump's strategies, his comments publicly and in private, and at least one talks about potential leverage that Epstein could have on Trump. Now, before I get into all of this, because there's a lot, the White House responded to this huge document dump today.
These emails prove absolutely nothing other than the fact that President Trump did nothing wrong. And what President Trump has always said is that he was from Palm Beach, and so was Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein was a member at Mar-a-Lago until President Trump kicked him out because Jeffrey Epstein was a pedophile and he was a creep. And this email you refer to with the name of a victim that was unredacted now and has since been reported on in this room, so I will go ahead and say it, Virginia Giuffre. And it was CBS's own reporting, Ouija, that recently wrote that Miss Giuffre maintained, and God rest her soul, that she maintained that there was nothing inappropriate she ever witnessed, that President Trump was always extremely professional and friendly to her. And so I think it's a question worth asking the Democrat Party, and you should all go ask them after this briefing, of why they chose to redact that name of a victim who has already publicly made statements about her relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and is unfortunately no longer with us.
We'll get to what the White House press secretary said in a second, but first, the facts. Fact, victim names are always redacted in these files. Fact, the documents I'm reporting on in this video were released by both Democrats and Republicans. Fact, all of the emails I'm reporting on are part of a trove of documents that the full House Oversight Committee received from the Epstein estate. These documents did not come from the Justice Department's massive Epstein file because they still haven't released that file, as you know. These emails are just the tip of the iceberg. There will very well be more emails or documents that mention Trump that come out that were sent over to the House committee by the Epstein estate as the committee members sort through them. Okay, so now to these actual emails. You already heard about the 3 specific ones from Jeffrey Epstein to the writer Michael Wolff and to Ghislaine Maxwell. In one of them, Epstein writes that Trump spent hours at his house with one of the victims. The Republicans say that victim was one of the most recognizable Epstein victims, Virginia Giuffre. In another email, Epstein told Wolff that one of the victims, whose name was also redacted, was at Mar-a-Lago and said, of course he, meaning Trump, knew about the girls. He asked Ghislaine to stop. And perhaps the most damning of these 3 emails is this one from December of 2015. It's also from Epstein to Wolf and talks about how Trump would likely try to distance himself from Epstein during a CNN interview on the campaign trail. Epstein suggested that he could craft some kind of answer that Trump could give to CNN. Instead, Wolf suggested that it would be better if Trump denied the relationship with Epstein. That way, Trump would hang himself, so then Epstein could use that secret as leverage if Trump won the election. Wolf suggested that Trump would then be in debt to Epstein. The White House press secretary said that these emails prove that Trump did nothing wrong. Now, the emails do not do that at all. They actually don't say either way whether Trump did anything wrong or not. Now, it is a fact that as of today, President Trump has not been accused of any wrongdoing related to Epstein or his victims. Caroline Leavitt also suggested that these 3 emails were taken out of context by the Democrats. That's actually not the case. The fact is, Trump's name is mentioned repeatedly in tons of emails from Epstein. The context is clear, whether it was true or not. Lots of people at that time believed that Epstein had some kind of relationship with, or pull with, or inside knowledge of President Trump during his first term. That is clear from these emails. For example, in this one from December of 2017, Epstein is talking to someone whose name is redacted about coming over to his New York house. The person emailed saying, "I'm at the door, but I'll wait for my time. I don't want to come in early to find Trump in your house," with multiple smiley face emojis. So clearly, this person knew not only of the friendship between Epstein and Trump, but also believed that he could accidentally find Trump randomly in Epstein's house. And in this email between Epstein and writer Michael Wolff from January of 2018, where it appears like Epstein is preparing to speak to a reporter about then President Donald Trump, Epstein writes to Wolff about not yet scheduling that conversation because "I need my marching orders." Then Wolff responds by saying, "Trump is going to go down." And Wolff wonders to Epstein in the email if the reporter is interested in talking to Epstein about, in fact, bringing down Trump. Wolff then says that Epstein should gently imply that I, meaning Wolff, have tapes to the reporter. Tapes? What tapes? What is he talking about? Also, who is Epstein getting marching orders from? Also, why would Wolff think back in 2018 that Epstein would have anything that could bring down Trump? And another email between Epstein and Wolff almost a year later in December of 2018, where the two of them appear to be crafting a narrative to downplay Epstein's role in the trafficking of young girls and instead point the finger at Trump as the real villain. Epstein writes, "Do you think we highlight that at the end of the day, it was prostitution, sex for money, a state crime with laws?" Wolff says, "That's not going to work." He says, "At this point, I don't think you can go legalistic. They've won the high ground, young, vulnerable, poor girls." Epstein writes, "I'm aware. I'm thinking what Trump would do." Wolff responds, "He never tries to explain. He denies, blames media, denigrates someone else." And in this email from January of 2018, Epstein is talking with another reporter from the New York Times where he says, "No question, Donald's statement is goofy," and then asks, "Early dementia?" I'm still going through all of this document dump. Again, 20,000 documents. If I find anything else that is significant, of course, I will share it with you. And if you want to see these documents for yourself, I'm going to email them all out to you tonight in my Facts HQ email, so make sure you sign yourself up.
Thank you very much, everybody. I'm Mr. President. Are you prepared to negotiate with Democrats now? Firmly. Mr. President, can you respond to these Epstein emails that were released today? Well done, Mr. President.
Jeffrey Epstein just exposed Donald Trump from the grave, because Democrats just dropped a bombshell after combing through 23,000 documents that they subpoenaed from the Epstein estate. In one email, Epstein said, of course, Trump knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop, and the dog that hasn't barked is Trump. And also saying that an Epstein victim spent hours at the house with Trump, and he's never once been mentioned, police chief, etc. And then keeping that in mind, in a 2015 email, as Trump was campaigning for president, Epstein and journalist Michael Wolff had this exchange. Wolff saying, I hear CNN planning to ask Trump tonight about his relationship with with you. Epstein says, if we were able to craft an answer for him, what do you think it should be? And Wolf responding, I think you should let him hang himself. If he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the house, then that gives you valuable PR and political currency. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you, or if it really looks like he could win, you could save him, generating a debt. With many saying it essentially sounded like Epstein had blackmail on Trump. Though with this, Republicans have accused Democrats of cherry-picking information to generate clickbait. But hey, you be the judge. Let me know your thoughts in those comments, and remember, follow to stay in the loop.
Breaking news rocking Washington, D.C. Never before seen emails released this morning by Democrats on the House Oversight Committee, raising new questions about President Trump's relationship with convicted sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. The emails provided to Congress by the Epstein estate show private correspondence between Epstein and his accomplice Ghislaine Maxwell, and between Epstein and author Michael Wolff, with multiple references to Trump, all raising more questions about what Trump knew and when. Epstein writing in a 2011 email to Maxwell that Trump, quote, spent hours at his house with a sex trafficking victim. Epstein calls Trump in this email a, quote, dog that hasn't barked. We should note it's not clear what exactly Epstein meant by those comments. Let's bring in MSNBC Justice and Intelligence reporter Ken Delanian. Ken, take us through what these emails say and their significance.
Good morning, Anna. Well, the one you just read is perhaps the most important one because it was written by Jeffrey Epstein in 2011, long before Donald Trump's political career. And he used the phrase, the dog that hasn't barked. That's a phrase from a Sherlock Holmes story suggesting a clue. And he says that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Redacted name of a victim, spent hours at my house with him. He's never once been mentioned. And then he uses the phrase police chief, etc. So these emails, essentially what they do is they raise new questions about Donald Trump's longstanding contention that he had no knowledge of Jeffrey Epstein's massive sex trafficking operation. These emails suggest that they don't suggest that Donald Trump was part of it. They suggest, though, that he may have known about it. There was another email written years later to Michael Wolff, the author from Jeffrey Epstein. And the context here appears to be about Jeffrey Epstein being kicked out of the Mar-a-Lago golf club. Epstein says, Trump said he asked me to resign. Never remember ever. And then he adds, of course, he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop. And then the third email is between Wolff and Epstein, and it's about Wolff telling Epstein that he believes that Trump will be asked in an interview. This is in 2015 as he's running for president, about his relationship with Epstein. And Epstein asked Wolff, if I were able to craft an answer for him, what do you think it should be? Now, that, of course, suggests that Epstein would be in communication with Trump and would be helping him craft an answer to a media question. And then Wolff answers, I think you should let him hang himself. If he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the house, then that gives you a valuable PR and political currency. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you. Or if it really looks like he could win, you could save him, generating a debt. So again, that suggests that Wolff and Epstein believe that Trump was more involved or has more knowledge of Epstein's operation than he was letting on. Again, none of this is definitive, but this adds to the picture and adds to the questions that both Republicans and Democrats have about what exactly Donald Trump knew about Jeffrey Epstein's crimes and his sex trafficking of both minors and non-minors.
Jeffrey Epstein mentioned Donald Trump by name multiple times in private correspondence over the last 15 years or so. These are newly released emails obtained by CNN that showed Jeffrey Epstein bringing Donald Trump up in conversations with Ghislaine Maxwell and the author Michael Wolff. We got them after members of Congress got their hands on them after they subpoenaed Jeffrey Epstein's estate, which in turn handed over thousands of documents to Congress. Now, in these emails, there's one that is a few years after Jeffrey Epstein got that sweetheart deal down in Florida, where Trump is referenced specifically by the late sex trafficker. Jeffrey Epstein writes in this email to Ghislaine Maxwell in April 2011 and says, I want you to realize that that dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Redacted spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. Police chief, etc. I'm 75% there. Maxwell responded and said, I have been thinking about that. Now, the name of this person was redacted by Democrats on the House Oversight Committee because they say she is a victim of Jeffrey Epstein's. But shortly after these emails were released, Republicans on that committee identified her as Virginia Giuffre. She's one of Jeffrey Epstein's most prominent survivors who died by suicide earlier this year. The Republicans are noting that in her book that she wrote, she talks about how she met Donald Trump, but does not accuse him of any wrongdoing. Now, of course, Trump himself is not actually a party to these emails. He is simply only talked about in these emails, and he has denied any wrongdoing and hasn't been accused of any. In another email that was released by the committee, the author Michael Wolff and Jeffrey Epstein are talking when Donald Trump is in office. This is in 2019. And Jeffrey Epstein seems to reference when Trump was saying that he had kicked Epstein out of his Mar-a-Lago club. Epstein writes, "Trump said he asked me to resign. Never a member ever. Of course, he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop." Now, that doesn't have any context in this release, but it seems to be a reference to what we actually heard from Trump earlier this year when he said that he kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of his Mar-a-Lago club. The White House says for being a creep, and Trump says because Ghislaine Maxwell was poaching women from his Mar-a-Lago spa. Now, all of this comes as in Washington here, a new House Democrat is set to be sworn in on Wednesday, which would make her the 218th vote on that discharge petition to release the files the Justice Department has in relation to Jeffrey Epstein.
Here are all the leaked emails that Epstein wrote about Trump. Epstein emailed Larry Summers saying that he has met some very bad people, none as bad as Trump, not a decent bone in his body. Epstein emailed Landon Thomas saying that Trump feels alone and is nuts, evil, beyond belief, mad. Epstein told Ghislaine Maxwell that a victim spent hours at Epstein's house with Donald Trump. Epstein asked Landon Thomas if he'd like to see photos of Donald Trump and girls in bikinis in his kitchen. Epstein told Landon Thomas that Trump once walked into his sliding door because he is staring at young women in his swimming pool. Epstein told Kathy Rumler, "I know how dirty Donald is." Epstein emailed Faith Cates suggesting that he spent time around Thanksgiving with Trump during his presidency. Epstein emailed Steve Bannon saying that Prince Andrew's accuser came out of Mar-a-Lago. Epstein told Norway's prime minister that Putin could get information about Trump from him. Michael Wolff emailed Epstein suggesting that he used the fact that Trump flew on his plane and went to his house as leverage. Epstein texted that he's the only one who could take Trump down. Epstein told Michael Wolff that Trump knew that a victim worked at Mar-a-Lago and that Trump had come to his home many times. Epstein told Thomas Landon that he gave his 20-year-old girlfriend to Donald.
Hey, MAGA. Jeffrey Epstein said in the email that Donald, quote unquote, knew about the girls. What you think he meant by that? He also said, "I know how dirty Donald is." What you think he meant by that? You know how bad you have to be for a convicted child sex trafficker to say that you are, quote unquote, worse in person? Dirty Donald, huh? I guess all of these sex allegations, that civil trial conviction, that ain't enough. The Epstein files, is that going to be enough for y'all to finally realize how dirty, nasty, disgusting, perverted, and gross y'all's president is? I don't think so. But yeah, release the files, release the files, release the files.
The dog that hasn't barked is Donald Trump. That's what Jeffrey Epstein said in emails to Ghislaine Maxwell that were just released.
But these are emails from Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell. This is one from April 2nd, 2011. And in this email, Jeffrey Epstein writes to Ghislaine Maxwell and says, quote, "I want you to realize that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump. There's a name that's redacted, which the House Oversight Committee has said is a victim of Jeffrey Epstein's. Obviously, we have not been able to independently confirm that because her name is redacted from this email. But they say redacted, spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned, police chief, etc. I'm 75% there." Ghislaine Maxwell responds to that email, John, and says, quote, "I have been thinking about that." Now, there's no context for that message.
So two people who have been found guilty, all right, of doing unimaginable harm to children confirm that Donald Trump is a dog that has not barked. This is it. There's no more excuses, MAGA. There's no more excuses. What more evidence do you need that Donald Trump, he's not just in the Epstein files, he's in the Epstein files.
Between the two of them. And in another email, this seems to be a reference to Donald Trump saying that he kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of his Mar-a-Lago club. And Jeffrey Epstein writes to Michael Wolff and says, quote, "Trump said he asked me to resign." And he adds, John, "never a member ever. Of course, he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop."
Now, again, we don't have the context of this email, but John, that comes as in recent months, we've heard President Trump himself and the White House say that Jeffrey Epstein was kicked out of Mar-a-Lago for being a creep. And Trump himself told reporters on Air Force One that he was trying to poach women, he and Ghislaine Maxwell, from the Mar-a-Lago spa. And that was why they had such a falling out and why he ultimately asked Jeffrey Epstein to leave the Mar-a-Lago club. Now, there's also a third email in here, John, and this is, again, in regards to Jeffrey Epstein and Michael Wolff. And Michael Wolff emails Jeffrey Epstein, and this is back in December 15th, 2015. So the height of the 2016 campaign, just to put that in perspective for you. And it was the day of a CNN Republican primary debate. And Michael Wolff says, quote, "I hear that CNN is planning to ask Trump tonight about his relationship with you, either on air or in a scrum afterwards." And Epstein wrote, "If we were able to craft an answer for him, what do you think it should be?" Michael Wolff responded at length, John. I'll summarize it. But he said, in regards to Trump, "I think you should let him hang himself. If he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the House, then that gives you a valuable PR and political currency. You could hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you. Or if it really looks like he could win, you could say him generating a debt." Now, I'll note, John, we looked at the transcript of that CNN debate from December 2015. There's a mention of Jeffrey Epstein in there.
Now, what's interesting about all of this has to be the timing of this right here. This means the House Oversight Committee, they've been sitting on this information for a while, and they're now choosing to do this as Congress or the House is set to get, started again after stalling for 7 weeks. This is what Mike Johnson has been trying his hardest to stop, this type of information. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. And Donald Trump knows it. Now it's all starting to make sense. Donald Trump, wow. I really don't know what to make. Actually, I know what to make of it. The dog that hasn't barked. That's Epstein validating that Donald Trump is a dog for sure. Just like him, a disgusting, filthy dog. And then you got to ask yourself, why hasn't that dog barked? And what was the victim in, reference? What was the victim doing with Donald Trump all by themselves? Make it make sense. But yeah, it was clear Epstein was able to blackmail Donald Trump, and Donald Trump was paranoid about that. That's why things played out the way they played out in Donald Trump's first term with Epstein. And now we're on the verge of watching him about to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell, who that email was sent to. It's like Governor Gavin Newsom has been saying, especially you Trump supporters, wake up. The jig is up. We all know what's going on now. You can't hide it.
House Oversight Committee Democrats released this new tranche of emails that were sent about or from Jeffrey Epstein. In one of the emails written in 2011 to Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein wrote, according to the release from House Democrats, that President Trump spent hours at my house with one of the girls or young women, one of the Epstein victims. In another email in 2019 to an author, Epstein wrote, of course he knew about the girls, as he had asked Ghislaine to stop. This is a part of a larger set of records that were obtained by the Congressional Oversight Committee, the U.S. House Oversight Committee, from the Epstein estate. You'll recall that the investigation Congress is doing into the Epstein matters involves them getting records from the late Jeffrey Epstein's estate. That's where this comes from. There are tranches of records coming from the estate to Congress almost on a rolling basis. They're being released. This is the latest set. The White House issued a statement in response to this, saying, quote, "The Democrats selectively leaked emails to the liberal media to create a fake narrative to smear President Trump." And they also say in this statement, the unnamed victim referenced in these emails is the late Virginia Giuffre. The White House says Giuffre repeatedly said President Trump was not involved in any wrongdoing whatsoever and couldn't have been friendlier. This timing is noteworthy because it's later today that after a month of waiting, Congresswoman-elect Grijalva of Arizona will become Congresswoman Grijalva of Arizona from Tucson, sworn into office later today, and she is committed to being the potentially decisive signature on the discharge petition that could force a vote from the House to order the administration to release the full Jeffrey Epstein case files. And also about the timing. We reported earlier this week, the Congressional Judiciary Committee. The House Judiciary's ranking member says he's gotten information that Ghislaine Maxwell has begun the process of applying for a commutation. All of this now happening at once.
Sound like some blackmail was going on there between Epstein and Donald Trump. It looked like he was blackmailing. No wonder why Donald Trump seemed like he's scared now. Go on out there and post something, Donald Trump. You were calling it a hoax before. Wasn't he saying Jeffrey Epstein was a hoax? It was a hoax. So I guess all 20,000 emails are a hoax, Donald Trump? All 20,000 emails, that's a hoax too, right? Unbelievable. Now you look silly saying that. So I'm sure there is more to come, y'all. It's going to be very interesting over these next several months with more and more of these Epstein files coming out, and Donald Trump either going to be doing what he's doing now, trying to duck and dodge or not posting nothing on social media all of a sudden, or he's going to come back out and try to discredit it. That's what I suspect he will do. He will try his best to discredit it. And the thing is, nobody's buying it when he says it's a hoax and Jeffrey Epstein is old news and all that. That nobody cares about that, Donald Trump. They really don't care. What they want to know is, are you a pedo or not? That's it. And the bottom line is, I think that's what this is leaning towards. And he knows it. He knows it. Dude is sweating bullets. He's sweating in that diaper today. Big time. Okay. Cassius Williams, 6633. Thank you so much for the super sticker. The Crawford Experience. Thank you for the super chat. Trump got his hand caught in the cookie jar. He sure did. I don't think he saw this one coming. I really think this one stunned him. Cassius Williams, thank you again for the super sticker. And Cassius Williams, John Fetterman hospitalized. Yeah, the next day after voting to open the government back up. Yeah, how interesting. Thank you for that bit of information. Now, I did hear about Jesse Jackson being taken to the hospital, but John Fetterman, no, I did not know that. But thank you for that piece of information as well as your support for my channel. I appreciate it. And for those of you that are looking for hair supplies, this is the last day for the 20% off of the hair gel. So if you are interested in getting some, this is the time to get it, because as of midnight, it goes right back to regular price. So y'all, please have a wonderful, wonderful evening. And I will see you again at 5:45. I do have another live coming up then. And this one is in regards to the shutdown. If you did not keep up with what's going on, which I know many of you do, Donald Trump signed the bill to reopen the government today. And, and people they only funded the government up to the end of January. And many people are anticipating that the government will shut down again, but we shall see. Now, with all this Epstein stuff, I would not doubt it, because Donald Trump, he wants this to desperately go away. And if he can shut it down even for a little while to get away from this, hell yeah, I think he would do it. Yes, I do. So I will see you then. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your support from my channel. Please share the live stream with others. I know many of you are. And I do deeply appreciate you taking the time to come to my live streams on a regular basis. Shalom, family.